Okay. Well, hey, it is high noon here on the West Coast, which means it's probably 3 o'clock on the East Coast. And then there's some times in between in the country, 3 hours or so. so, but what I'm trying to get at, it's time for the CU Digital Town Hall, everybody. So it is time to have some fun here. And before we introduce our guest today, which is going to be really, really fun, we had a little prep call yesterday. I can't wait to talk about this topic. But just a big welcome to the CU Digital Town Hall. What number was this again, Melissa? What number is this one? It is number 70. Oh my gosh, we've done 70 of these, John. Holy smokes.
That's amazing.
Time flies when you're having fun. So yeah, this all started out when COVID hit, obviously a year and a half ago. And we're talking about, gosh, people were all caught, deer caught in the headlights and stuff. And it's kind of transformed into these really fun tech talks about, what people are doing out there and going digital and operations and lending, you name it. We've covered it. So really, really fun time here. So, hey, let's get to our sponsors, and because without them, this doesn't happen. So, and I think you've all gathered that John Best, that is, not going to make it today. He had a previous engagement crop up at the last second. So we are going to fill in, and John Finlay is here from Lemonade LXP. He is the CEO of Lemonade LXP, but I want to get back to our sponsors real quick. First up is CUNA Councils, and some fine folks there. CUNA Councils, if you don't know, they put on some fabulous conferences year round. They cover everything from lending to marketing to technology to leadership. They have it all, and they do stellar jobs in the conference arena. And John Best is actually a big part of that. He does a lot of sessions and keynotes for the CUNA Councils. So thank you very much for CUNA Councils for being a supporter of the show. And next up is Correlation. Oh my gosh, one of the top core processors in the credit union industry. Talk about open banking. They are the ones that are defining it right now. So the fine folks at Correlation just doing some great work for credit unions out there. Cutting edge technology, pardon the 90s term, but they're doing some really great stuff in the core area. And speaking of which, they have their big client conference next week out here in San Diego. So be aware of that. We're going to have a lot of conference coverage here on CU Broadcast of that conference. So stay tuned for that. I think it's Tuesday and Wednesday next week. So stay tuned for that. And then also we have Member Pass powered by the folks at Bonify. Fantastic digital ID. You can't swing a cat these days without talking about digital ID and how it's really come to the forefront in the last year and a half. So the fine folks at Bonify and their Member Pass app is just doing some great work there for credit unions. And then also, obviously, CU Broadcast, and then we do video interviews. John's been on quite a few of our episodes, so we always appreciate John coming on and giving us his insights. And then also the fine folks at Best Innovation Group. They obviously, John started that many moons ago and just doing some great work on the technology front, and in particular, voice technology. So yeah, so it's really some exciting things going on in the industry, but we just want to say, hey, a big thanks to all our sponsors. Without them, this wouldn't happen. And also want to give a shout out to the CUNA Operations and Member Experience Council and CUNA Technology Council conference coming up. Oh my gosh, September 21st and 22nd, right around the corner. So stay tuned for that virtual. So stay tuned for all that. We're going to have that coverage as well here on CU Broadcast too. So a lot of stuff going on. Big shout out for that conference. And then I want to get to our special guest today, Mr. John Finlay, again, Lemonade LXP CEO. John, welcome to the CU Digital Town Hall. Happy to have you here.
Yeah, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Good to be here. I'm curious as to how often you swing a cat.
Well, the traditional saying is, hey, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting something. I don't want to rip on cats, or especially dead cats, but so we'll be swinging some cats. So okay. Just a little politically correct version of that saying. So, but yeah, A lot of stuff going on out there. So yeah, welcome. Hey, before we get started, John, give folks out there a quick summary or a quick 411 on Lemonade LXP and what y'all do for credit unions out there. Get my Texas accent here.
I'll give you a little bit of background. Lemonade is
Sure.
actually a spin-off of a company I co-founded back in 1999 called Launchfire, which is a game-based digital promotions company. And the promotions we build are designed to educate consumers and get them to buy more stuff. And so along the way, it was the education piece that kind of got us into the Lemonade learning space. It started first in 2005. We ran a promotion for the Tylenol brand, and the sales manager played the game we'd built to educate people about the rapid release pill and said, "This is a great educational tool. Could you morph it into an e-learning program?" Which we did. And it turned out to be the top training program they'd ever run. Wow. And consequently, we got written up in a couple of publications.
Right on.
Yeah. And then, but after that, we did everything we could to ignore the business. But despite our utter neglect and our worst marketing efforts, we kept getting a trickle of clients. So how we got into banking, fast forward to about 5 years ago, we're working with MBNA on their college campus promotion. They get acquired by TD. And so the VP of marketing and MBNA becomes the head of digital for TD. And he contacts us and says, my challenge is not enough of my customers are using my digital channels. What can you guys do? So we thought about it and thought, promotion doesn't really make a lot of sense because it reaches a national audience, most of whom aren't your customers and aren't going to care about your technology. But when we thought about it, we thought, where are these people? Well, they're coming into your branch and they're calling your contact centers. So we asked them, how fluent is your frontline staff on your digital products? And we learned some interesting things. First thing that we learned was that TD's employees don't have to bank with them. And we've since learned that that's the case at many financial institutions. So you can imagine if you don't bank with your FI, you obviously are not going to use the tech that frequently. Yeah. So you're not going to be fluent in it, which means you're not going to have the knowledge and confidence you need to promote it. So we suggested running a training program for frontline staff, which we did, and it did very well. And then TD said, okay, we want to roll this out more broadly. And we hadn't really built a scalable program at that point. So we asked for a little time to build a platform, because in the time that we were working with TD, we did some research and realized every FI has this problem. So that's how we ended up with a learning experience platform. But the digital adoption platform, which is the other side of our solution, that was actually serendipitously, it was TD Canada who contacted us and said they asked us to build a bunch of walkthroughs of their technology. So over a couple of years, we built a couple hundred of them. And then their tech changed and we had to change them all. And they weren't happy about the fact that it would cost money. And so we asked for a little bit of time and we built a platform that allows you to very quickly author walkthroughs of your technology as well. So that's how we kind of ended up in the space and being, I think, the only company with a learning experience platform and a digital adoption platform all baked into one.
Fantastic.
So that's kind of our history. We've been in market for 3 years. We're at about 30 customers. Wow. And we've really started to grow quickly since about 6 months into the pandemic.
What do you result that quick growth for? I mean, obviously it's a great product, great technology behind it, but what else do you attribute that quick growth to?
Well, this is kind of gets onto the subject of what I thought we could talk about today is the digital journey and how the pandemic affected it. So this is the experience we heard from customers and prospects and people we're talking to in the banking space. So the pandemic hits and they say, well, we got to send people home. We got to get them out of the office to keep people safe. So everybody starts working from home. Offices empty out. And people head home. And the consequence is, of course, the branch shutdowns or at least reduction in branch services leads to more and more customers migrating to digital channels. So this is interesting because it's something that financial institutions have been striving to do for years to get people to use a digital channel. So along comes COVID. As terrible as it is, it's a bit of an opportunity for FIs to finally drive the digital adoption and transformation that they'd been hoping for all these years. And of course, in the industry, a lot of people are saying maybe it was as 2 years, maybe it was as much as 10 years that it accelerated digital adoption. So that's the good side of the story. But the bad side of the story is these employees that were sent home and customers who now have to bank digitally, a lot of them weren't fluent on the product. So what that led to was a flood of calls to contact centers and support requests and chatbots and so forth. And the contact center wait times got super long. And so a lot of FIs actually shifted tellers who had gone home into the contact center roles.
Yeah.
So that's great. But if you think about it from the employee experience, what a stressful thing.
No
You're
doubt.
accustomed to being sort of a transactional person who handles people's transactions when they come in. And suddenly you're being asked to help support people in technology that you aren't that familiar with. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of being tech support for your parents, but so, my folks will call
Sometimes,
me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the experience, they call you up and they need help with something and they're already frustrated because they've gotten to the point where they can't figure out what they're trying to do. So they call you and they're like, okay, can you help me through this? And they're a little edgy and you can't see with their screen. So next thing you know, you get a little edgy.
Yeah.
And the sort of anxiety in the conversation rises and it ends up not being a great experience for either you or the customer. And in that case, that's my parents. But you can imagine that was happening with contact centers. People call up, they're trying to figure out, how do I log into online banking? Or how do I change my password? Or how do I send money to my kid? Whatever the thing was, these poor folks on the front line were being asked to support it without any tools and without the shoulder-to-shoulder colleague support that they once enjoyed at the office. In the old days, if somebody had a question you couldn't answer, you turn around to a colleague and get that answer quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was a stressful time and already a time where there was a lot of anxiety. People are worried about their own finances, their own health, all these other things. And throw on top of it, now you're working from home without the support and tools that you need to offer good support to customers. So that was the experience. And so for us, here we were with a platform that could solve the problem, but most financial institutions were paralyzed for about 6 to 8, 10 months. In the sense that they were just so much effort. It was all hands on deck to try to maintain a reasonable customer experience and get through the early part of the sort of massive disruption that the pandemic caused. That evaluating new systems and platforms and so on and so forth just wasn't on the radar.
Right.
And so even though this could help them, they were too busy bailing water to be able to look at solutions that might be able to patch the hole, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of what we found through the early part. And then once FIs kind of got through that early part and realized, okay, we're settled in for the long haul of the pandemic, that people were going to stay at home for much longer, that the migration to digital wasn't going to be sort of a short-term burst, but rather a beginning of a longer-term trend of people using digital channels. And then the recognition too that your fintech is going to change over time. So the recognition that investments needed to be made in driving frontline fluency and confidence with the products, and in supporting customers as they migrate to digital. And so that led to a significant amount of growth for us and is continuing to do so. But what's interesting to me is the sort of longer term trend and the things that we're seeing in the marketplace. So we do some customer surveys and banker surveys, and over the last little while, and so in every webinar we have polls, and we're polling bankers on sort of their priorities. And it's interesting, the digital transformation side of things, about 52% of them say it's a super high priority, and 32 say it's crucial. So you're talking about 84% saying it's a high priority or it's crucial. Yet then when we ask, how fluent is your frontline staff? The answer is not great. 63% say their frontline staff has some knowledge of the technology. 25% say they're sort of novice and using it a little bit. And then 8% say, not at all. And so in a moment where we're being forced to go digital, I think a lot of FIs are finding that they despite the fact that they were striving to drive adoption all these years, really weren't in the right position to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was that sort of, build it and they will come perception.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. Like, oh, we built our fintech. It's great. Now our customers can bank digitally. The challenge is these are habits that people form, right? And changing habits is hard work, and it takes a considerable effort, and it's an all hands on deck kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with, your marketing and messaging that you send out to customers, and even how you position yourself to new customers or prospects, having that sort of digital first mentality. But once you've driven the awareness and created that willingness for people to try using your tech, you then have to support it so that the customer experience is smooth.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we've found that a lot of our customers and other folks we're talking to have had trouble. And so I'm curious to know what other folks think.
I am too.
And where everybody else is, what kind of challenges everybody's seeing here on the town hall today. What are the challenges you're seeing with helping both staff and customers migrate to digital?
Yeah, it's kind of like, and yeah, to segue on what you just said, I'd love to hear from you guys out there, even if it's in the chat, or if you guys want to unmute yourself and contribute. We would love to hear what you guys are experienced or had experience in this area. It's kind of like the theme of the show, kind of, I should have said this at the very top. It's kind of like the changing role of the frontline employee, or reskilling the frontline employee, because we all know that happy employees equal happy members in this case. So if you are equipping your staff with the right tools and the education and the training, then they're going to be able to do their jobs much, much better. They'll be happier, and then that will translate into a better member experience in this case. So we want to hear from you guys out there, what you guys experienced or what you heard out there, anything like that. So it'd be a really great education for those who may be going through something like this right now, where their frontline staff is like, oh, they're still pulling their hair out and what to do. And working in a remote, many of us are still working in remote environments and are kind of by ourselves. Like you said, like you talked about, John, no longer do you have that, can you knock on the cubicle next door and go, hey, I got this issue, can you help me out, type of thing. They're a phone call away, or they're a text away, or they're a Slack away, something like that. So would love to hear. Just based on that, John, what have you heard out there before folks kind of chime in? I would love to hear anything that you've heard as well, because you're kind of on the front lines talking to folks out there too, right?
In terms of what I've heard about what FIs are doing for that?
Yeah, what have they done? Yeah, what are they doing out there? Obviously equipping their staff with the right tools and training to. Yeah. I've heard training is such a big issue right now as well, especially in a remote environment.
It's really interesting. There's some interesting statistics out there. So when we poll bankers, it's I'm trying to think. So it's 93% of L&D leaders feel they should use their learning management system for that. Mm-hmm. And 27% of employees agree. So it's a funny circumstance, right? Because a lot of the learning systems are a little bit old and their experience is a bit mm-hmm. antiquated. Yes. So we've seen customers using Zoom to sort of get people together for a knowledge sharing session where people can ask questions of a certain SME at the organization to try to understand stuff. We've also seen the use of videos, so create a video and distribute it. The challenge with that, of course, is that it takes a little bit of time and it's a bit more costly if you're trying to do them well. And then some folks have continued to have small in-class stuff. So those tend to be. We've had a couple of clients, they tend to be more in the South, that have had continued sort of little smaller sessions of in-class stuff. So I think FIs are doing a lot of different things. But I think the larger ones who nobody's gone back yet, that's where we're seeing a lot of interest in what we do. And often it's trying to cobble stuff together with your existing learning system. That's a little bit time consuming, and it's kind of like MacGyvering it to work for their current situation, in terms of like creating walkthroughs and stuff is not so easy. So it's a tough time in that regard, in terms of finding solutions to upskill that frontline staff and give them the confidence they need.
Yeah, no doubt. I think MacGyvering it was probably one of the main themes of, in the last year and a half. Let's just make it work somehow. Let's put some bubble gum here and some string there and see how it goes here, especially from a security standpoint as well. And we talked a lot about that type of stuff. So but how do you support staff so that they can effectively and happily serve members here? Obviously, I think education is priority one, right?
Yeah, so I think there's a bunch of things when it comes to the digital banking side of things. The first thing that staff need to have is foundational knowledge about the technology. And when I say foundational knowledge, I mean things like, what's the daily limit for depositing a check if there is one? Can you deposit a check in another currency? Can you?
Oh yeah.
Was there a limit to how much money you can send to someone on using e-transfer? Whatever. All these types of questions that typically would be distributed. The information would be distributed to frontline staff in sort of a static. Either it's either a PowerPoint or a PDF. The challenge with that is, first, it's not a searchable resource. So what employees need is help in the flow of work. It's not like old school teaching would say, here's a bunch of information, now tell it back to me. Okay, you know it. And I would imagine most people on this call have the distinct memory of walking out of a school exam after all of the stuff that you crammed into your brain for the exam has left you. And then, 2 months later, trying to remember any of it. It's not the best way to learn.
Yes.
And so
algebra comes to mind, John.
Right.
Why do I need algebra?
Right. So I think the first challenge is that foundational knowledge and providing a repository that's quickly searchable, so that when a customer has a question, you can pull that answer up and give them an answer as quickly as possible. So the foundational knowledge is, to me, the first piece, because a lot of the questions you're going to get asked are going to be not so much about the tech, but what are the limitations, restrictions, rules around using it. So having that knowledge will help you sort of take down those types of customer support requests. But then there's going to be the ones of people that just can't figure out the technology.
Right.
And I know we all like to think that our digital experience is super smooth and easy to use and intuitive. But I think customers would beg to differ on that. And so having walkthroughs of the technology that you can quickly create and quickly change is important, and you need them in a searchable repository. So somebody calls in and says, I'm having trouble enrolling in online banking.
Mm-hmm.
So the ideal circumstance is that I can say to the customer, no problem, Mr. Lawson, what are you having trouble with? Oh, I'm having trouble with the security, with the security requirements. Okay. So I can pull up a walkthrough, and then I can go select the exact screen that you're having trouble with and get some guiding text and say to you, okay, let me walk you through how to do that. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, I can send you a link to that walkthrough so that you have it because the first time you use it, you might not learn. Here's an example. I'm sure you've had the experience where you're driving someone home and they're giving you directions.
Oh yeah.
You get them home. And then the next time you go to drive them, you can't remember. It's because you turned your brain off because they were just telling you what to do and you didn't actually think. Right. So that can happen in a contact center circumstance where you call in and somebody walks you through the transaction. So the nice thing is to be able to email them that walkthrough right after, so that when they come back the next time and they've already forgotten, they can go, oh yeah, that guy sent me an email. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, my bank is Plains Capital. Okay, so I'll just search Plains Capital in my email. Oh, there's the link to the walkthrough. I don't have to call the contact center again. So suddenly you're reducing call volumes, and on that initial call, you're reducing talk times. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple of things at play. There's some cost savings, but the most important thing is you're de-stressing that conversation, because again, the employee who is at home, who has no support and no help, that's stressful. And coupled with the fact that they're dealing with a frustrated customer, I mean, anything that we can do to improve that conversation, de-stress it, and improve the customer experience and improve the employee experience, I think it's crucial. And I tack onto that bankers are now finding that staffing is becoming an issue, right? People are leaving their jobs, not coming back to their jobs, looking for other opportunities. And so I think doing everything we can to make sure that the employee experience is a good one is crucial right now because of the labor shortage. And ultimately, the customer experience is dependent on the employee experience.
Oh, completely.
Like if your employees aren't happy, your customers are going to feel that. If your employees are anxious or stressed, your customers are going to feel that. So to me, it starts with, I mean, I think we all mostly thought that, oh, this is all about the digital experience, right? Often forgetting the human element. But the truth is, obviously you have to have a decent digital experience. That's sort of table stakes. But then the employee experience has to be exceptional because if the employees don't know how to use the tech or are stressed about using the tech, that's going to show in how they handle customers. So to me, it's like digital DX plus EX equals a great CX, right? So I think it all ties together really closely, and that you have to make investments in all of those areas to make sure that transition is smooth.
Yeah, I think a great example, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, is I just saw a story, I can't remember what publication it was, about the restaurant industry and how that industry is having some terrific challenges in getting their employees to come back. And this story actually interviewed some of employees of restaurants around the country, and they were saying it is a super stressful job, and in some cases we're not taken care of properly, or that. There's many reasons why they didn't want to go back. They decided to go to another industry where they were taken care of, and therefore they can do their jobs better. So I just kind of like take that and go, wow, that's a great example of what we shouldn't do. And just to kind of illustrate your point, in another industry where they're having incredible challenges in getting people to come back just because of the environment that they're in. It's really hard. And so therefore they can't serve because they're on the fringe right now. They're just hanging by a fingernail right now, many of these restaurants. So if they can make, I'm not a restaurant expert or anything like that, but if they can improve that situation, I'm sure many of them are, then that will bode well, and that'll bring their employees, these folks, back to working for them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy. The particularly in the early days of the pandemic when everybody was a little anxious, you can imagine the customers calling the contact centers were a little wound up.
Oh,
much the way somebody is when you've overcooked their steak or burnt their creme brulee too much or whatever it is.
Yeah, or bring out the wrong order.
Yeah, so, sure. And I think that's really the frontline staff issue that you've got, is that this has been a tricky time for frontline staff no matter where. And restaurants are a great example because, let's face it, it's not the preferred vocation for most people. So it's kind of a circumstantial vocation in a lot of cases. So if the employee experience becomes so stressful, you're wise to walk away from a job like that. If you're, your number one thing is your health, right? So exactly. If your job's stressing you out, you got to leave. So I think that's sort of, to me, the number one thing. And for us, I think the approach, the key thing for the approach to both customers and employees is a little bit of empathy, understanding that everybody's gone through a very pretty tricky time. And we need to be understanding of that and to do everything we can to make sure that their journey, that we're largely the curators of, is a good one. For employees, it's really up to us to create the good experience, as it is for customers. As bankers, it's on us to create that.
And that's your image. Yeah, that's your image, basically. Yeah. So that frontline experience is your image. And I want to get back to the digital aspect of it. And this is just me thinking out loud. I could be completely wrong here, but are organizations, maybe financial institutions in this case, are they putting too many eggs into the digital basket and focusing on that too much? Or because I've heard, the pendulum is swinging way over to the digital, obviously, because we had to, but is it going to come back to where we can balance and really have a fine balance between the human interaction and the digital balance? And so I've heard the term phygital. So there's a physical and digital coming together. I think we're in this time now where we're trying to find that balance, especially when we're talking about the consumer experience, or in this case, the member experience with the frontline employees. What do you see out there in regards to that?
So I think, like before the pandemic, I spoke at a few conferences in Europe. And what struck me was that a lot of the Northern European financial institutions, there were a few that had no branches left. This is pre-pandemic.
Oh my
and
God.
I said, weren't your customers mad? And they said, yeah, for about a week. And they got over it. And now we're a digital bank. So my feeling is that clinging to the sort of physical branch is going to be tenable as long as there are baby boomers around. But with each generation passing on, each new generation is increasingly digital, increasingly comfortable doing things digitally.
Yeah.
And so I think what you're going to see is a change in the way banks and credit unions service their customers. And so I'll give you an example. We have a couple of customers who aren't planning to go back to full branch services, but rather go to sort of a hybrid where the branch will be open for less hours. And so what they're using our platform to do is to create a banker that has a broader skill set to handle that they can be a teller for part of the day, and they can be a contact center person for part of the day, and they can be an advisor. Mm-hmm. So it's more than even the universal banker. It's, a person whose skill set and knowledge is broad enough that they can fulfill a number of roles that are customer facing. And I think that's probably closer to the future that I think. Like, I think for certain transactions, I don't know why anybody would come into branch to cash a check. As more and more people, the younger kids come up and they're more accustomed to digital. I think, check cashing, why would you bother? It's just
exactly.
It's just a hassle. But where you are going to still want to talk to someone is, I probably want to talk to someone about mortgage or insurance on my overdraft or my line of credit, like those kinds of things where there's a bunch of fine print that I don't want to have to read, and I'd much rather talk to someone about it.
Yeah.
So it's turning that front line into an advisor, into someone who understands, a fairly wide swath of product that can then say, here's how to handle this situation, but can also say, yeah, no problem. I can do that. I can do that wire for you as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we've been talking about that for a few years now, ever since, digital has had this huge momentum about the branch becoming more of a consultative environment rather than a transactional environment, because now you can do all this self-serve. You can do it on this thing. You can do it on your computer, all the bells and whistles. So that I'm going to transfer that into our conversation of changing the role of frontline employees. That puts even, I don't want to say more of a burden on educating and training those folks in that branch, if you want to turn it into a consultative environment, so they are well trained in whatever area that member needs. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it's you need a broad knowledge of your credit union's offering, but then you also need the soft skills to be able to uncover some of the challenges that customers are facing. And those soft skills are, often overlooked. I think probably credit unions staff is maybe a little bit ahead of banks in that regard, because there's much more focus on the member experience than necessarily there is in a bank. But still, I think that stuff is crucial, and again, as you go back to the pandemic and where people were anxious, having those soft skills in that moment was crucial. And I think it's still going to be the case, because you're still dealing with people's finances. And there's also a perception, not as much in the credit union space, but certainly in the banking space, there's often frustration with their financial institution. People perceive it as a service that's gotten more expensive over time, that isn't offering incremental value, and blah, blah, blah. So you can get frustrated customers a little faster. I don't think it's quite the same in the credit union space, though.
Well, that's good to know.
Well, yeah, I think that's my assumption.
There's proof in the pudding. Yeah, of course. And I want to get back to what you were talking about, the digital aspect of it. And I keep thinking, and I apologize to everybody for this, but I keep thinking Chime, I keep thinking SoFi, and how that experience is driving the digital channel. But what is their contact center experience like? Are their frontline staff, are they super trained, educated in all things finance, that type of stuff? So I would be curious to know, and I haven't been on their sites to really kind of investigate that part of it, but if you know it, or anybody else on the call has any education or knowledge in that area, I would love to know what that experience is like, and how their staff are taken care of and trained and educated in all areas of finance to help out these supposed millions of consumers that are turning to SoFi and Chime and neobanks like that. So I don't know, any thoughts there on that one, John, or anybody else for that matter?
I don't have a lot of insight there, Mike. I gotta say, what I do see is that we aren't there yet in terms of contact center frontline staff having sort of universal banker capabilities.
Yeah.
There's still like, you talk to a frontline staff and say, oh, I'm interested in mortgage. You're going to get more often than not referred to a mortgage person.
Right.
Or, so I don't think we're quite there yet. But what's an interesting accelerant of that is, these AI-backed chatbots and AVAs and such, as AI allows us to dispense with advice more quickly and pull from a much deeper set of data than we did than humans can. We may be able to improve that member experience in the initial member experience. So it's like, you ask a chatbot a question about something, they can give you the foundational knowledge and then say, okay, now that you've got a base understanding, maybe it's time to talk to a representative. But sort of paving the initial part of that journey so that it's easy for them to sort of dip their toe in without having to talk to someone. Because one of the things I notice with younger generation is they don't want to talk to people as much. They want to do a lot of their own legwork on their own before, and then they want to talk to someone only when it gets sort of complicated. Yeah. Like I notice it with my kids. You say, you say on nights when it's like we're too lazy to cook, you're gonna order a pizza. Okay, you're gonna call them? No, we're gonna order it online. I'm like, why wouldn't you just call? I think it's easier. No, it's not. And so that's a big difference, right? Yeah. And I think that's gonna definitely take hold in the banking space, where you're gonna look for information from a robot first, and only when the robot has been exhausted and can't give you the nuance you need, then I'll talk to a human. Right.
Our middle child, who at the time this story took place was just a few years ago. She was a senior in high school. She's now a sophomore in college, but she wanted to open up her first account. And I said, well, you can do all that right here on this thing. She's, oh, I know. But I don't know if she's the anomaly to this, but she actually wanted to go into the branch and talk to somebody and open the account. And I was floored by that because that went against everything that I've been hearing in the industry for years. So, again, maybe she was just different in that, and she needed that reassurance of talking to an actual human being face to face, just to start things off. But after that, she was all about this. She didn't talk to anybody ever again after that. So I just found that experience, firsthand, really kind of, it floored me, because she just kind of threw a monkey wrench into the whole thing.
You said an interesting thing there about, some assurance that the account's open and stuff, and wanting to talk to someone.
Yeah.
It made me think of the first time I booked a flight online. And I remember thinking, like, how do I know that this is actually booked? Like, how do I trust a website that I, don't know anything about, that it's actually booked a flight, whereas I'm accustomed to talking to a travel agent?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's changed so much in the last 15 years, is that we no longer question or have sort of insecurities or worries about online transactions of any sort.
There's trust now. Yeah, we
there's
trust
and there's faith that it's going to be executed properly, and that, I think, was the biggest hurdle we had to overcome. And I think it was overcome first by things like travel and online shopping and so forth. The eBays and Amazons and so forth. And now it's down to, I'm willing to send money by email, and I'm willing to pay my bills online and do my banking online. I wonder one day, I always think to myself, if it's safe enough for me to bank online, why can't I vote online?
Exactly.
Why, so I think the more time goes by and the more young kids who are born and raised on digital come into and become the sort of the breadwinners in the marketplace, the march to digital is only going to increase.
Yeah.
So I think these investments in people are crucial as part of that, ushering those customers to the digital space in a way that's not stressful and a positive sort of member experience.
Yep, indeed. I'm going to turn to the chat here. I think you have a fan here, John. Kim Schmidt said, this is a great product. It can help close the gap between the digital services team rolling something out and frontline staff being able to support new features. So you got a fan there, it sounds like.
That's an excellent description. I've never put it that way, but that's exactly what most customers are using Lemonade LXP for, both the learning experience and the digital adoption, is to close that gap between digital services and frontline staff. That's really, really well put, Kim.
Kim, did you want to say something?
I just said I'll let him quote me if you'd like to, John. You can steal that if you want. I didn't trademark it.
Well, I'll footnote you for sure. I wouldn't be so bold as to outwardly plagiarize, especially not now that I see Mike's recording this. There's evidence, right?
That's right.
It's not my first Zoom call,
Yeah, we're all PhDs in Zoom now. Come on. And then Nathan added to it, which now requires even more expertise on the part of the human. So that's a really good point as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of our customers, we just sent us a video, which is really kind of them to do this. They sent us a video of the various people in their training department talking about their experience, and a couple of cool things were said. One was that their employees have told them they're using the Lemonade microlearning to prepare for meetings. When they know they have a customer who they're going to be talking about a certain thing, they can go and snag a bit of courseware and go through it super quick before their meeting, and to allow them to have more meaningful conversations, which is exactly why we built it. And so for me, that was like, it was really a pleasure to listen to that. But the other cool one was they had a guy come into their classroom learning who was playing some of the modules are game based, and so he was playing the game based module, and he wanted to get perfect, so he wrote down all the answers on a piece of paper so that when the next time he went through it, he could ace it. But he said to them, as luck would have it, he had a customer inquiry just the next day that he was able to handle because he had memorized all this stuff.
Wow.
And I was like, man, that's exactly like for us who've, poured our blood and sweat into it. It was really rewarding to hear that. But I think that's what it's really about, right? Is for those frontliners who are, it's on them to deliver the service and deliver the advice.
Yeah, it's a lot on their shoulders.
If
Yeah.
if we can make that pleasurable and even fun for them to learn the skills and knowledge they need, what a win. Like suddenly that employee experience is can turn into something a little bit more fun instead of like, oh God, I got to do my bank training. Right.
Yeah.
So that, to me, that's where the magic can happen. So to hear stuff like that, honestly, just warms my heart.
Yeah, and I know this is probably an old and tired example, but I'm an Apple fanboy, and at every touch point, and this is just my personal opinion or experience rather, I've had a pleasant experience, whether it's at an actual Apple store, a contact center or customer service, or online. I've always had a really good experience, which keeps me coming back to that company to buy their products. And every person that I've talked to has been educated. They're very knowledgeable. And if they don't have the answer, they send me somewhere to somebody who does have the answer. It's a very pleasant experience. And I know Apple probably spends billions on, creating that experience, but it's just, Apple's been used over and over and over again, but that's the one I can think of right now. But every touch point, it's a pleasant experience.
What's interesting about that is they've done such a good job of the customer experience that we will tolerate that our new phone doesn't fit the old charger and it's going to cost us X numbers of dollars, right?
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that makes me want to throttle someone. But because Apple's done such a good job, I'm like, I guess I'll pay $90 for a cable.
Yeah.
Right. And people do it. It's an incredible story, because imagine if I came to you with a business plan saying, I'm going to start a tech company, but I'm going to charge $90 for the wire. You would be like, no, you're not. No, I'm not funding that business.
You'd be gone.
They did it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's the same thing as I always laugh about Starbucks. Back before Starbucks, coffee came basically for free with breakfast, and many of the restaurants would advertise a bottomless cup of coffee, which when I was a kid, I was like, how the heck did that work? And if somebody came into your office and said, my business plan is to open a coffee shop and charge $5 a coffee, I would have said, not a chance.
Mm-hmm.
But because the customer experience is what it is, they threw couches in there. They made it kind of feel a little bit more like you're at a bar kind of restaurant. Mm-hmm. So where people hang out and you can people gaze, which is, I think, a big part of the whole Starbucks thing. So what can we do as credit unions, as FIs, to enhance that customer or member experience to the point where we can maximize value for our customers and members, but also maximize value for our organization? And those two examples of Starbucks and Apple are tremendous success stories.
Yeah, they're the two top ones for sure. Hey, I want to bring Kim back into the mix. Kim, if you're still there, because you added another comment in the chat that you said that we implemented Zelle recently and our contact center especially is struggling. Can you share a little bit more on that if you're still there? I hope she is. If not, bummer. Because that was
I'm still here.
Okay,
I'm still here.
Okay, cool.
So we rolled it out, and a lot of our contact center staff just doesn't use P2P in general, so they don't understand the concept. So here we roll it out to our members, and then if the members had any stumbling blocks whatsoever, they would call in for assistance. And even though we provided them with a document that had step-by-step instructions on troubleshooting and what to do, they still struggle through how to answer those questions for our members. So we actually demoed this product a couple weeks ago.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I really liked it because it does give that animation and everything flows better. So we're looking at the the member portion of it. So I think is it Digital Academy, John?
That's right. I actually just threw a link in. I actually
Okay.
just threw a link into TD's walkthrough of Zelle.
Yeah. So we looked at that and my mind went in 100 different directions because we have lots of processes in online and mobile banking that just require a little bit more coaching, either for the member or for our agents to be able to better coach the member through what they need to do next or what the next step is. So this product was extremely intriguing for us because this is something we can throw on our website. Members can go in and self-serve, and if they're stuck and they need to see that animated, workflow of what they need to do, they'll have it at their access if we're not at the credit union, or they can call in and our frontline staff can watch a little clip and know exactly what to tell the member. And they'll be able to see what should be on the page, what they need to click next, which fields need to be filled in. So this is kind of a great bridge so that our employees can better serve our members, or members can better serve themselves.
Yeah. Ooh, even better.
They're into self-serve.
Kim, there's a bunch of other ways that our clients are using it. So for example, some have integrated it with their chatbot. So when people ask a question that can be solved with a walkthrough, it recommends it. Also in AVA, so when people call in and the automated voice assistant asks them a question and they can solve it, they send them a text with a link to the walkthrough that will help them. And then it's also used by the marketing department. So when you send out an email to promote a new technology or a new feature, instead of just a static email saying we rolled out, bill pay, it's take it for a test drive. Come and touch and feel it, because that's what's going to drive the adoption. So we're seeing clients use it in ways we hadn't even imagined. That's the amazing thing about a piece of software is when you put it in the wild, people do wild things with it. You're like, oh, we should have thought of that. So there's a lot of different ways it's getting used, which is super exciting for us because, to see it take a life of its own is pretty fun. Anyway, I'm glad you enjoyed the demo.
Yeah, thanks for sending that Zelle one. That is exactly what would help.
Yeah, I figured. It's interesting. We've just seen in the last 3 months a significant interest from the fintechs, because one of the knocks that banks have and credit unions have on fintechs is that they don't do as good a job of supporting their products as they do in selling them. And so we've had some inquiries and we're in partnership conversations with a few of the larger fintechs to use Digital Academy so that they can provide it for their customers as a support mechanism. So that's kind of cool. So anybody who sees our tool and thinks it could use, pester your fintech.
I love it. Thank you very much, Kim. Appreciate the contribution there. And again, John, we got that on tape. That's recorded. So it's even better.
Yeah.
So good stuff. All right. We have about 8 minutes left. If anybody else wants to chime in, and oh gosh, I used the word chime again. I keep using that. Sorry. If anybody wants to participate or say something along this line, we highly recommend it. Kim's contribution was fantastic. And as well as Nathan, who added a bit there in the chat. So anything else here to add, John? Because I think this is a really, from what I've heard out there and the people that I've talked to, I mean, you're spot on this as far as being, a really big, I don't want to say issue, but a big topic in the industry right now is kind of reskilling your frontline employees as we're still trying to get out of the whole pandemic mess and people are still remote, still stressed out a little bit. So anything else to add up from your end on this?
I think in the last, I guess it's 6 or 8 months, we've actually added a number of credit union customers. And I think why we're seeing interest in the credit union space is there's a extra focus on the member experience. And so I think it offers credit unions an opportunity to show that extra white glove service that they've always kind of hinged their value proposition on. Mm-hmm. So I think it works well for the credit union space, and we're hoping to see a lot more growth there. But I also think it's like people always see the customer facing aspect of it, the Digital Academy with the walkthroughs, and But I think what's often overlooked is the employee experience. I really think, like, I just think it's so important to give your employees the tools they need to succeed. And that's, to me, where the real magic is. I mean, I get that members need support, and I get that, but I really think it's still driven by people as much as tech. And, ours is a technology, and of course I want everybody to buy it, but I still believe that people are the drivers.
Yep. And to your point that credit unions, about their member service, they set the bar high, and I'm preaching to the choir here. So through all of this, whether it's digital or in person, they gotta stay at that bar. They gotta actually even rise above that. So with tools like this and other tools out there, they can do that. So the tools are out there to keep that bar set very, very high. That differentiates credit unions from everybody else. So it's really cool to see this type of stuff. And yeah, I can't agree more that the employee, the front line, especially the front line, man, that's your image basically.
Yeah. And I've also noticed that there's been a bit of a trend in credit unions buying banks lately.
Oh, yes.
Which is interesting, right?
Yes.
And so that's another area where I see, there's a big challenge when you buy an organization. There's a cultural shift that has to happen. You need to get everybody on the same page in terms of knowledge and service level expectations and so forth. And so I think, again, that goes back to the people aspect. Yeah. It's easy to go buy an organization. That's the easy part. Your bean counters work with their bean counters, decide what's a fair price and get it done.
Yeah.
Well, after that's done, what's the next step? How does that credit union take a bank and a bank's way of thinking and their ethos and turn them into essentially a credit union service?
Yeah, that's a huge culture shift for sure.
Yeah,
and that might be a topic for another show. For indeed.
Yeah, it's just something I thought of because I keep reading it. I keep reading, oh, this credit union bought a bank. This credit union bought a bank, and I would keep thinking to myself, wow, that's a big. In the middle of a massive shift in how people do their banking, to also then say we're going to have a massive shift in this organization of how our employees think and do their jobs. That's a lot of change all at once.
Yeah, I would love to talk to a credit union that has bought a bank.
Yeah,
and get to the other side of it. 6 months down the road, how'd that go? How'd that culture shift go?
Yeah,
so
for sure. Yeah, I think it's challenging. I mean, it's. But I'm with you. If you ever have that person on, I'm in. I want to listen.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's make it a priority. Good stuff. All right, John. Well, thank you so much for hanging out here for an hour. Appreciate it. And I wanted to come full circle because Tariq, did you see his top chat? He said, speaking of cats, John, you should get.
Yeah, I'll tell you the story. So my daughter loves cats, and we have had a string of cats. We had one cat get pregnant, had 6 cats.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, but it didn't have a good pregnancy. And then one cat died each day.
Oh,
it was awful. Anyways, on this crazy cat journey, one of our cats ran away. Well, it didn't run away. We went to Europe. My parents took it to the cottage. And when we got back, they said the cat ran away at the cottage. So my wife, because she hates to see her daughter heartbroken, talked to everybody in the little town where the cottage is and said, if you see this cat, call us, whatever. So they call us, somebody calls us and says, we got your cat. So we go out there and we see the cat looks exactly like our cat. I guess it's our cat. It's even got the same nose mark and everything. So we're like, okay, but it's gone feral because it's been gone for months.
Oh, wow.
So the cat's feral, but it's, it's identical and whatever. So we bring it home and we have these 2 other cats. So we have to acclimatize it. And so we put it in one of the kids' rooms and just kind of keep the door shut. And then we go in there and the cat has removed the grate from the heat duct and has gone into the ductwork.
Great. Oh my gosh.
So I bring some food, try to coax it out, whatever. It won't come out anytime the door is open. So this goes on for 2 weeks. Can't get the damn cat out of the ducts. Yeah, I know. So then finally, what I did, it only took me 2 weeks to figure this one out. I put the food on the far side of the room and put enough barricades and stuff that it would have to go over them. So it would give me time to catch the thing when I got it.
Right.
So I finally corralled the cat, and because it was so strange, we brought it to the vet. They lifted up the tail and noticed that it had some male parts, indicating that it was not our cat.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, John.
So we just had a strange cat living in our walls for 2 weeks. I'm telling you, if your daughter loves cats, find a way to get her a hamster or something.
Oh my gosh. All right, that was well worth the wait. And that rounds out this digital town hall.
I can tell you that the cat's member experience wasn't great, and nor was the employee experience on that.
Dare I ask, what happened to the cat? Did he return to his feral existence, or?
Indeed, the cat was taken back to where it had come from, and because it was obviously an outdoor barn cat or whatever. So
yeah, they're happy outside. So okay, oh my gosh, that was well worth it. All right. I wanted to bring it full circle since we're swinging cats in the beginning, and now we're taking care of cats that aren't even ours. So, all right. On that note, John, thank you so much again for your time today. Great conversation. And thank you to Kimberly and everybody who participated as well. Appreciate it. And actually, we'll be off next week. The Digital Town will be off next week because of the Correlation Conference. And but I think we'll be returning the following week. So, but until then, everyone have a great rest of your day, and be well, be safe. Okay.
Thanks, gang. Thanks for having me, Mike.
Well done. Anytime, sir. Well done.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
All right. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.